Good evening, folks, and though it is not yet camping season, it is time to start prepping the camping season menus. So it is February, and the first recipe I'm going to start attempting, and yes, this is actually my camping Blackstone, but in the winter when I want to try recipes, I use it on my stove so that I can truly get an idea of how these things will cook. The first recipe that we have for the season is a Kentucky Derby Hot Brown, which is turkey, cheddar, bacon, tomato, and your choice of bread. I'm actually going to use a sweet bread, and first step is to cook the bacon. While that bacon continues to crisp up, I'm going to make a Mornay sauce. I'm not exactly sure if that's the correct terms, but that's a pretty simple recipe. It's butter, milk, flour, cheddar cheese, salt, and nutmeg. And I make sure that I'm using the same ingredients I would use, or the same products I would use while camping. So let me show you how this works. So my first step in a small saucepan is to turn on the heat, add roughly 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of butter, and allow that to melt. Now, I will add that I'm going to make some adjustments to this recipe because I'm picturing that I would be over a camp stove, or that I would be over a fire. So, put my saucepan over the fire. So while this melts, I'm just going to whisk it around. Let the butter melt. Do not let the butter brown. Now that it's pretty warm in there, the next step is adding my flour. Again, you're combining the two. You are not going to let these two brown because that changes the flavor. The next step to the process after you've let it cook, you add milk. Now this is kind of the important step. You're going to whisk it or stir it, whatever you're going to do at camp. And I would highly recommend trying any new recipe ahead of time at home in a controlled circumstance so that you're not out there enjoying life and then getting flustered over your meal. Camp meals should never be something that are frustrating, aggravating, or that you really have to think too much to do. So I'm just going to let this cook for a second. Now you're looking for this to reduce. I have actually cut this recipe significantly because it's a trial run. Once it starts to boil, you're going to reduce your fire. And I know you might be going, well, how do you do that at a campsite? We don't have a controlled circumstance in camp, so we lift our pans. This will reduce the amount of heat that's going to your recipe. And you're going to look for this to start thickening. Once it starts to thicken, then you're going to add a little salt. Again, I said I use the products I use at camp. Little salt. Little pepper. Slight dash of nutmeg. That gives it a little flavor. And then I'm going to add cheese and I'm going to stir and let this thicken. Okay, so I've added my cheese, and I want to point out that this is something you can do ahead of time. And this same thing for a hot brown is called a Mornay. In French, it's called a bechamel. So basically, you can end up making this ahead of time, and you can use it over pasta like mac and cheese. You can put it over sandwiches. You can put it over nachos, whatever you want. So this is the first step of the hot brown. Now I realize I said to do it like I was camping, and the reality is I would actually use my Blackstone to cook my sauce. I would use my Blackstone to heat my next pan. So this is my next pan and my next step. Again, this is something that I most likely would have available sitting off to the side. The bacon I would have already had cooked, because if I knew I was making a bacon dish at night, I'd cook a little extra in the morning. So I'm gonna wait till this heats up. It does take an extra second because you're basically heating up, I use cast iron, a cast iron on a cast iron top. So that's the first step. Next step, add butter and allow it to melt. Okay, with this recipe, the next ingredient would be something I don't leave home without. Don't ask me to pronounce it, we'll all start laughing. Little splash of that. After that, Dijon mustard. Again, wouldn't leave home without it. Oops, my lid's gonna squirt off or fall off. Now, doesn't that look not appealing? But trust me, it tastes amazing. So then I'm gonna let all that melt and I'm gonna mix it up really good. Again, the recipe calls for something, but I like to make adjustments to the official recipe. The recipe calls for poppy seeds. I personally prefer something that maybe not everybody would. I live and die by everything bagel seasoning. So instead of poppy seeds, I'm gonna throw way too much, because it's gonna be yummy, poppy seeds in there and sesame seeds and everything. I'm gonna mix it up. And if you don't like this, you can just use straight butter or butter with Dijon or butter with the brown sauce that I'm not going to pronounce. And you're just going to mix this. Now the next step is very much like a grilled cheese. You're going to take this and you're going to put it on the back of this. And I'm just going to brush it on because it's a little chunky, it's a little messy. You can do it however you want. And again, this is part of my camping gear. So I would have a fancy little brush. Then I'm going to put this on here because my Blackstone is hot. Here's where it gets fun. On my grill, as my bread is grilling, I'm going to put my turkey. I'm going to put some bacon. Then I'm going to put, let's see, a little, I like using shredded cheeses when I'm camping because my kids aren't the most patient. So I'm going to put some of that. I'm going to put slices of tomato. And this is where we're going to use that yummy sauce that we made prior. The bolognese, the whatever you want to call it. We're going to use the cheese sauce. And it's still warm. And I'm just going to put some of that on top here. At home, you would bake this in the oven. Well, we don't have an oven if we're at camping.
Mom, I found Mr. Pete.
So?
Mr. Pete's a game.
Oh, wow.
So
I'm going to do it like a grilled cheese. I'm going to layer another layer of turkey. Then my bacon. Then my shredded cheese. And you might go, well, how's the cheese going to melt? Well, it will. Trust me. And it will do it before the bread burns, because I'm sure some people are going, the bread's burning, the bread. No, it's not. Oh, I forgot my tomatoes. And tomatoes make this sandwich so yummy. You do not need to add salt and pepper because salt and pepper is in your cheese sauce. So let's get the cheese sauce in there. It's a little difficult to pull it out with a whisk, so I'm going to put my cheese sauce right on top. And then I'm going to put the bread on top of that. And I'll be back in just a minute. There's the whole thing. What I did for the second piece of bread is I actually just dipped it in my butter sauce. Now I'm going to let it cook. I'm actually going to use a lid topper that, again, I carry when I camp. And I use it all winter long as I grow accustomed to things. So I've now pulled it off of the heat. I know it looks dark, but don't forget, we have the sauce, the Dijon, the seeds, all of that on a white piece of bread. Our cheese has melted really nice. And excuse the onion because while I waited, I made a quick feta, cucumber, red onion salad to go on the side of it. So that's a derby hot brown. And hopefully you guys will attempt to try this before camping and enjoy it while camping. Thank you, and you guys enjoy your travels.